right, you guys, it's episode 63 of Inner Demons. And like always, I'm going to jump straight to it. So check it out, you guys. I'm just going to jump straight back into this because I remember where I left off. And even though, it was just a couple of days ago since I cut my last Inner Demons, I listened to episode 62 still just so that I could remember where I was at. Now, I told you guys that I got arrested. We went to Campbell PD. From that point on, I was taken to the hospital. Then I was transported to the county jail, and I was escorted in by 3 guys from the Department of Justice. And then you had another highway patrol officer that was just part of the transport team. I told you guys how they pretty much walked me through the whole process. I don't know what their trip was, why they wanted to be there, why they didn't just drop me off like they did everybody else and let the county jail do their thing. But for whatever reason, maybe they wanted, a little bit more recognition. I don't know, but they stayed there the entire time. Got my fingerprints done, my pictures taken. From that point, they put me into a holding tank. They let me make my phone calls. I was in there for about a good hour, an hour and a half. And then from that point on, they escorted me over to where gang intel is. Gang intel and classification. It's all one big area. Everybody's got to go through there when you come into the county jail. Behind that, there's a dressing room. That's where they dress you out, they strip you out, and that's where you throw on jail garb. They put you, whether it's double red, whether it's orange, or whatever it is, that's where they're going to dress you out at right there. Now, the one thing that I really want to really resonate with you guys is this. Out of all the county jails I had ever been to, Santa Clara County, the gang intel officers were more involved with the inmates over there than any other county jail I had ever been to, including Monterey County. Monterey County, those gang intel officers over there, they're savvy. They've been around. They know all the players. They know who's who. And, they're pretty involved as far as like where individuals should be housed at, who's in good standings, who's in trouble, who's calling shots, who just got recruited, all that good stuff. Now, Santa Clara County, though, they take it to another level. These guys, for whatever reason, they get involved with the actual agencies that make the arrest. In my case, it was Santa Clara County Specialized Enforcement Team. And again, I explained to you guys what this agency was about. It was an agency that where they basically they have officers come in from different departments, whether it's San Jose, Santa Clara, Campbell PD, Highway Patrol. They have them come in and they work in this agency for 2 or 3 year intervals. And these guys go after high profile gang members. They go after high level drug dealers that are dealing a lot of weight, violent criminals. That's what they do. It's a special agency that just targets these kind of individuals specifically. And in this case, that's why they came after us. I was running an NF regiment out there in San Jose. So like I said, these guys, they were really involved with the officers that were making an arrest, that made the arrest. In my case, the primary officers was Dan Livingston. He was the main one from Campbell PD. And then you had another guy named Ted Lewis, or they called him TJ, and he was from Santa Clara or San Jose PD. He was also part of San Jose SWAT because he was part of the team that did the breach when they raided my house. Now, when I say that these guys get involved with the agencies, I'm talking about, they're involved on a daily basis. These guys, when we first hit the jail, they were on our mail, they were on our phone calls, and none of these other guys that came after us paid attention to what happened with us because they were making the same mistakes. My case continued to snowball. I got arrested on 6/11/2004. And from that point on, over the next 10 years, these cases would just continue to just keep going and going and going. One regiment led to another. This regiment led to another. This network led to another because these guys weren't paying attention to what happened to us. They could have learned something, but these guys didn't understand that the phone was the worst. It was our own worst enemy. I made that mistake in my case, and you guys are going to hear more about how a lot of people ended up getting caught up on the phone because we were trying to get money off the streets. We were still trying to coordinate activity from the county jail, the regiments, those that were still out there functioning. Nobody listened though. Nobody paid attention to what happened with us. These officers could have made a lifetime career out of just prosecuting these cases right here, because it just kept on leading to other cases and other cases and other cases. And at one point they got tired and said, you know what, enough's enough. We got to go back to doing other things. We can't just stay on this, you know, for the rest of our careers. So anyways, the other thing that I really want you guys to understand is that, you know, I told you guys how the 3 guys from the Department of Justice, they were really trying to get me to cooperate. You know, they kept on propositioning me. Come on, man, you know, you can go to another state, you know, get your name changed. And I wasn't trying to hear none of that. I was still fully committed. I was still fully loyal to the organization. At no time did I even consider it. You know, all I kept telling them is, look, you're wasting your time. You know, I dumped on myself. I buried myself at my house. I took responsibility because of my wife, but I'm not talking about nobody else. You know, I knew that this was coming. I knew as far back as 1994, when I made a commitment to the NF, that this day was eventually going to come. Mike Eo told me. I knew as far back as 1989, when I committed myself to the NR, that eventually I was going to catch a life case. You know, and this wasn't my first 3-strike case. That's what a lot of people don't understand. This wasn't my first rodeo. You know, I had fought other 3-strike cases in the past. The one I caught in Mendocino County, you know, I got lucky and beat that on a 995. But, you know, I thought that was, you know, that was going to be the case that was going to send me up for the rest of my life. But it wasn't. I thought that Monterey County, that they were going to get me caught up out there, but it didn't happen. It ended up happening in Santa Clara. So, you know, the other thing I really want you guys to understand too is, because all this is important. All these things that I'm trying to point out to you guys that I'm highlighting is important. Now, you know, my mom and my stepfather, I told you guys that I had several conversations with them when they put me in the bullpen or the holding tank and gave me action at using the phone. I had several conversations with them, and, you know, my mom had knew the first time I came out the joint back in 1992, she knew I was hooked up. You know, the streets talk. She knew. She could tell by, you know, when I got out, she could just tell by the way that I was. You know, she seen the tattoos, she seen the things that, you know, that I was involved in, but she never spoke on it. She gave me that respect. She knew I had obligations. She knew that I was a part of that lifestyle. And I want to say that a part of her, she respected it. She respected it. She didn't believe in it, but she respected it. Now, when I got caught up in this last case, she knew this was a different animal. She knew that, you know, that I was a 3-striker. She knew from back in 94 that I was sitting on 2 strikes, and that if I caught another felony, it was game over. So, you know, when I got caught up in 2004, this time she wasn't being quiet about, you know, her thoughts. She was more outspoken about it. You know, her whole thing was like, you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I don't want to say the first day that I got there, she started talking about cooperating, but she was like, you're in for a long battle. She knew I was going to be there for a while. She knew that it was a 3-strike case. But this time when I got caught up in 2004, she knew this was a different animal. She knew that I was looking at a life case, that this was a 3-strike case. She knew as far as back as 1994 that I was sitting on 2 strikes, and that, you know, for like 9 years, I had been walking on eggshells, and that if I caught another felony, it was game over. And she never really spoke on it before. She gave me that respect. And I think in some ways, she even respected the fact that I was affiliated. But when I caught this case, you know, the gloves came off. She wasn't holding back on her feelings. Now she was being more outspoken. What are you going to do? You know, you're in for a long fight. You're going to be fighting a life case. She's like, what are you going to do? She didn't try to urge me or try to, you know, encourage me to cooperate that first conversation, but she was already like, you know, you need to think about yourself this time. You know, your wife is out here, she's dying, she's got lupus. What are you gonna do? You know, you need to come out here and take care of her. You need to come out here and, you know, be with your family, be with the people that have been behind you. We're the ones that send you money. We're the ones that put money on your books so you can go to canteen. Nobody else is doing that for you. When you get caught up, your homies ain't there for you. I knew she was telling me a lot of things she was telling me was spot on, but I still wasn't trying to hear it. You know, even though she was my mom, I always looked at it like, you know, they don't understand our politics. Our families, they don't. How can they? They don't live that lifestyle. So a lot of the stuff that she was saying, I was like, you know, it kind of went in one ear and out the other. You know, but you know, she was broken up about it, and she even went as far as telling me, you know what? It's like this. Well, she would end up telling me that later, so I'm not going to say that now. But anyways, so after I had these phone conversations, you know, these officers still, this is the other thing that I really want you guys to understand, is that they were really trying to get me to cooperate. They kept propositioning me. Come on, man, you know, loyalty only goes so far. You need to think about yourself, think about your future. You're 34 years old. You're getting ready to go away for a long time, you know, and once it happens, once they drop that hammer on you, it's over, man. You know, but like I said, I was firmly committed. I was loyal to the NF. Not once did I ever stop to think about, you know what, maybe I should cooperate. That wasn't me. It wasn't in my DNA. I'm telling you guys, you know, I have no reason to lie about that now. What's done is done. But, you know, I was fully committed, and I kept telling them, you know, you guys are wasting your time. I told them I already buried myself by taking responsibility for everything that you guys found at my house because I was trying to get my wife cut loose. But I'm not willing to go any further than that. I'm not talking about nobody else. I'm not, you know, it was never my position to start throwing people under the bus because, you know, shit got too crazy and now I was trying to save myself. If that was the case, I would have done it right there. And I probably wouldn't have got indicted. If I would have done it from the jump, from the day one that they got me, I probably wouldn't have stayed in the county jail for 10 years. I probably wouldn't have got indicted. You know, they probably would have cut me loose a lot sooner. But again, it wasn't something that I was even considering. I knew that this day was going to come eventually. When I made a commitment to the NF, when I made a commitment to the NR back in 1989, I knew one day I would be doing a life sentence. It comes with the territory. It comes with the lifestyle. Anyways, again, you know, I can't emphasize it enough. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and they would do this for the next year. They would continue to try to come up and try to get me to talk, try to get me to cooperate. Come on, man, you know, the window's closing. Well, I thought you said that last time, you know, go ahead and close it. Do what you guys got to do. It's not going to happen. Anyway, so after they dressed me out, they put me in double red. They escort me up to 2nd East, and they put me in an observation cell. They probably had like 6 observation cells in that county jail, but that was probably the best one because, again, it had a TV that was sitting right in the window. It had the speaker up on the ceiling. So it was like surround sound, but seriously, it was a Bonnaroo observation cell. So it wasn't that bad as far as that. But their whole purpose for keeping me in that observation cell is because this agency, and I want to say it was Agent Livingston himself, told the gang intel officers in the county jail that I had too much influence. He told them he's got too much influence with the North Daniels. He was running a regiment, a street regiment, an NF street regiment. He's a C, a high-ranking C. He's got too much influence. Keep him separated from the other North Daniels in the county jail. So this is the reason why they were taking all these extra steps to lock me up, to basically try to keep me up under the jail. They would go above and beyond what they normally do to keep somebody isolated. And I'm going to tell you guys how. So, you know, the first couple days while I'm in the observation cell, I'm starting to go through withdrawals. It's starting to kick in, and it's bad. I told you guys how much I was doing. And the other thing, like I said on my live tonight with Sandman, is that because of who I was and because I was a leader and because there's stringent policies against drug use, it's not like I could tell medical staff that, hey, I'm withdrawing from heroin, because I had to keep that under wraps. I didn't want nobody else to know about it. I didn't want nobody else to hear about it. Even the COs that work in the jail, they're some of the biggest gossipers in the jail. If they were to find out that I was on medication to help me with my withdrawals, they would have told other people in the jail. So I had to keep it under lock and key. I just had to deal with it myself, cold turkey. And I'm telling you, I had like 15 gorillas on my back. I didn't have a monkey on my back. I had a whole pack of gorillas. Anyways, I want to say the first 3-4 days was just, it's beyond anything that I can ever even articulate. The withdrawals were just crazy bad. I was hot, then I was cold, hot, cold. I couldn't eat. I lost a little bit of weight. I was feeling it. The aches, the pains, every symptom that you get from having withdrawals, I had them. I was throwing up, all that, but I had to keep fighting through it. I had to somehow find the strength to get up on my feet, because there was a lot going on in the county jail that I still, because of who I was, I still had to make contact with the homies. I still had to try to reach out. There was a lot of things that I still had to do, and I couldn't do it if I was laid out. So I had to find the strength to get up and do it. You had COs that would literally just come up to my window just to look at me, because they were probably out there talking like, yeah, there's a high-ranking NF member down there, boxer from San Francisco, and they got him in the observation cell in 2nd East. They would just come up to my window and they'd just be staring in there, and I'd be like, what's up, man? But that's what they would do. They would just come up to my window, look in there, and half the time I just ignore them. I look at them and I just go back to watching TV or doing whatever I was doing. But I couldn't stay curled up in the ball or being laid out on the floor. I had to keep this shit under wraps, and that's what I tried to do. This was by far the worst withdrawals I had ever been through. I mean, you're talking, I told you guys, you're talking 2-3 ounces within a couple of weeks. That's a pretty bad habit. There was times where I felt like I was gonna die. That's how bad it was in there. Anyways, at some point, I knew that I had to get up to and make some phone calls. I knew I had to reach out to some of the fellas out there and try to, find out what was going on, who was still out there. I was in the observation cell, so I didn't know who they were bringing into the jail after they brought me in. I didn't know if they made more arrests. I didn't know none of that. I suspected that like Sykes was still out there, Pony was still out there, and a lot of the other guys that, besides the ones that I knew about, Roger, John Santa Ana, these guys were just associates, but that most of my regiment was still out there. So anyways, over the next 2 weeks, even though I'm going through the withdrawals, I still mustered up enough strength to get up on my feet and, make some phone calls to my family, try to reach out to Sykes. I tried to reach out to Pony. I tried to reach out to a few of the different brothers that were still out there. Now, the first time I called Vicky when she got up to Ukiah, it was good at least to hear that she was around her family again, that she was around her mom, her sister, her son, her brother. Her dad was still alive at that time. So it was cool to know that she was at least in good hands and that she didn't have to worry about just the house and all the stuff that was going on. That was something that nothing could change what had happened. I wasn't getting out of jail. She couldn't do nothing to help me. I didn't want her coming down to visit. It was too far. I told her not to worry about putting money on my books, even though she insisted that, she bring up something for hygiene or so that I could eat. And I told her, what, just worry about yourself. I'll be okay. There's a lot of homies in the jail. They're looking out for me. Don't worry about it. For the next week, I had several phone calls with her and with my mom and my stepfather. My stepfather was probably the only one that just slid back and just, he respected whatever decision I made. And me and him, when calls would later come out, the thing that people didn't listen to is like what my stepfather had to say. Since they really wanted to get in my business and listen to everything that was being said in these calls, they heard my mom encouraging me to cooperate. You need to do what you need to do to help yourself. You need to think about your family for once. And she had told me, this is where she had told me that, you know what, if you're not gonna show us the same kind of consideration and the same kind of love that we've showed you, for all these years that we've been behind you, we've supported you, we put money on your books, we sent you packages. She's like, if you want to be locked up in prison with your team, she's like, then don't even call here no more. We're not your family no more. Just go ahead and go on with your life, because it hurts too much. It hurts to see what you're going through. She's like, you need to really think about this. Think about, for once, reach deep down inside and think about the decisions you're making. She goes, because once you drop that ball, there's no coming back from that. She's like, your wife needs you. I talk to her every day. She's broken up about your situation. And I knew this already. Then when I talked to Vicky, Vicky, at first, she wouldn't speak on nothing. She didn't speak on my situation. She knew that I was in trouble. She knew I was a 3-striker, but I kept downplaying it. Look, it's just a dope case. More than likely they're gonna drop some shit. I'll probably make it back home. But let's see what happens. I haven't even been to court yet. So, I knew that my mom was having conversations with Vicky. I knew that they were having conversations, and that my mom was getting in her head, telling her that, you needed to push him to start cooperating. You need to push him because his mind's not in the right place right now. He's just thinking about, this is, they knew about me trying to take the cases off of everybody else. I actually told them this when I was in the court tank, that, hey, I'm trying to fucking, take as many of the cases that I can. They're like, what are you doing? And I was like, what's the use of all of us going down on the same case if I can take other cases off of people? Because I'm done already. I've already buried myself. I told him I was trying to take the case off Roger. I was trying to take the case off John, the old man. And they're like, you're crazy. You're crazy. What's the matter with you? And trust me, they weren't using these terms. Like I said, I'd have a conversation with my mom. She'd be pushing, you need to call this person, call that person, call Washington, D.C. My mom was crazy, and at some point, my stepfather would grab the phone and he'd tell me, he's like, look, man, I know what you're going through, and I'm going to support you no matter what you decide to do. If you decide that you want to, go spend the rest of your life in prison with your boys and stay solid, I'm going to respect that, and I'm going to support you. And if you decide that this is it and that, you want out of that lifestyle, I'm going to support you in that regard as well. And I told him this. I told him, Pops, listen, man, Mom's, she don't understand. She don't understand these politics. It's not that easy. You don't just start telling on people. You can't just walk away from something like this. I knew this day was coming. I made my own bed. I'm willing to lay in it. I'm not going to start throwing people under the bus just because it got too, things got too crazy and I couldn't deal with the time. I got to do it, man. These are my people. This is all I know. And he was like, I respect that. I respect it. Nobody said nothing about those phone calls. All people keyed in on is, my mom talking about cooperating, me cooperating, her encouraging me, her urging me. You need to cooperate. You need to cooperate. And then at one point, Vicky started to talk about it. What are you going to do? Are you really going to try to take these cases off these other guys? Like, I knew my mom was getting in her head, by the things she was saying. Are you really, preparing yourself to go do life? Nah, this is just a dope case. That's all it is. I'm coming home. I'm going to come back home. And she's like, well, what if you're not? What if you're not, Boxer? What if you don't? What if they try to give you life? What are you going to do then? And I told her, look, this was after like a week of them just relentlessly just continuing to just all I heard was tears. Every time I would call, all I would hear is, you need to cooperate, you need to cooperate. So eventually I told her, look, if that's what I got to do, if I got to cooperate to get back home to you, that's what I'm going to do. In the meantime, you need to just take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Go to the doctors. Continue to take your medication. Continue to do what they tell you you need to do to stay alive. Otherwise, all this is for nothing. So, these conversations, I want to say there was about 10 conversations where that's all my mom talked about. When I would call her, I would tell her, at one point, Mom, stop talking about this stuff. These calls are being recorded. You're going to get me caught up. You know what I mean? I told you, if that's what I got to do, that's what I'll do. But, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it when I'm ready to do it. And right now, I haven't even been to court. And then again, she'd hand my stepfather the phone, and I tell him, Pops, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that, right? I mean, you understand that. But nobody that listened to these calls ever said nothing about that. It seems like nobody wanted to give me the benefit of the doubt. If they were going to dissect my phone calls, listen to all the personal calls I had with my lady, with my mom, okay, that's cool. I can understand it. But nobody ever said nothing about like, hey, you know what? B was talking about this with his mom and his girl, but when his stepfather got on the phone, he said it. He said, hey, I'm not going to, I can't do that. I'll never be able to do something like that. You understand that, right? It seems like they just wanted to focus on what my mom was saying and the fact that at one point I started to acknowledge them. So, I was in the op cell for about 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks tops. I was in there. And again, I had several of these phone calls. This all happened during the first 3 weeks that I hit the county jail. You're talking in June of 2004. Now, at some point, I ended up going to arraignment. I went to arraignment, and at that point, I was given a criminal complaint, and I was charged by myself. Conspiracy, participating in the criminal street gang, all the possessions for sales, and then the weapons charges, right? So they hit me with all these felonies, and then they hit me with 3 strike priors, and they also hit me with gang enhancements. So looking at it, I knew it was ugly. It's like, this is bad. I'm not coming back from this right here. So when I went to arraignment that first time, I remember seeing John Santa Ana down there. I remember seeing Roger, but they were separate. All of us were separated at that point. And I had a chance to touch base with both of them. And at that point, I still didn't know Roger was cooperating. So I see him and I'm like, man, it's good. I'm still going to try to take the case. John Santa Ana, his phone calls came out and he had talked about it with his lady. It was, everybody had copies of those phone calls as well. He was like, hey, I ran into the big homie today, man. And he's really willing to take this case off me. He told me that he'd take it. And, it was like, man, I feel bad for the dude. The dude's going to do the rest of his life in prison. And his wife was like, yeah, it's messed up, but you need to think about yourself right now. So, I mean, his family's kind of telling him the same thing. She's not telling him to cooperate, but she's like, everybody needs to think about themselves. So anyways, after I went to arraignment that first time, about around 3 weeks later, they pulled me back down to the court tanks, and I'm still going through it. The withdrawals were horrible. I cannot articulate enough how bad it was. The only thing that made me feel better was just to take a hot shower, and I would feel good for about 20 minutes, and then I would feel like shit for, the rest of the day and for the next couple of days. And this lasted for over 30 days. I wasn't able to sleep, eat, nothing. So after 3 weeks, they pull me back down to court and they amend some more charges on me. They come with another criminal complaint. They add in the conspiracy, and they add in the, being in possession of $25,000 that was derived from criminal activity. So they add in all that stuff. When I was going back, when they were escorting me back up to the observation cell, instead of getting on the elevator that would take me back up to Second West, they take me to the other elevator. They go like, you're not going back over there no more. Where am I going? Now, let me back up real quick, because this is the other thing that I failed to mention to you guys. So I told you guys when I was still out on the streets that I was in touch with, I told you guys that I was in touch with Athomi, Joel Beta, and that this was an individual that I had running the county jail through me. I appointed him as the regimental commander for the jail, but he was doing it under my guise, if that makes sense to you guys. He was making the day-to-day decisions. The major decisions were coming through me. So I had a direct plug to him. You know, he would call me like every other day, every 2 days. So I knew he was in the county jail somewhere. I knew he was in an area called Area 51, ADSEG, but I didn't know where that was at because I had never been to the jail. At one point, I want to say I asked one of the COs or something, hey, where's ADSEG at? And he pointed to a door. It was just a solid door, and he's like, that's ADSEG right there. So I knew a beta was back there. I knew Chopo from Watsonville was also housed back there. And there was another individual named Silencio, not Bobby Lopez, but another silent from San Jose that was back there. So, you know, at one point, while I'm in the observation cell, so the other thing that I didn't mention, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but the other thing that they were doing to try to keep me shut down, because this agency told them that I had too much influence over the Norteños in the county jail, is every time they would run any kind of meals or any kind of movement, court movement, or whatever it was, they had this big white nurse partition that they put in front of my door. They put it right there in front of my window so I couldn't see who was walking by when the snake pits were around the corner. So whenever they would feed, right out in front of my observation cell was the chow hall. So I could see right into the chow hall. But when they started running the snake pits in or any of the other mainliners, they would put that big nurse partition up so that I couldn't see. It obstructed my view. And that shit got me upset, you know, because at one point I was like, hey, you guys ain't going to shut me down. You know, you're doing that stupid shit, putting this up so I can't see my boys out there. You know, you guys can't shut me down. But, you know, eventually they were doing it the first week, maybe the second week they were doing it religiously. But after a while, you know, somebody forgot. Somebody got lazy, they got tired of doing it. And at one point, you know, I had managed to make contact with the homies that were there in the snake pits. Matter of fact, Angel Martinez was still there on another case, not the shooting that he got caught up for on Impala, but he was there for another case. So I touched base with him. You know, they shoot me a care package. And, you know, at some point, somebody ended up telling that Angel had made contact with me. They ended up moving him. They moved him to the 4th floor. So that was the end of that. Anytime they had any of the court movement from 2nd East, Max, the double reds, they would put that partition up. So, you know, I was upset. I knew Joel Beta was back there somewhere. And when classification would walk the tiers, I would ask him, hey, why you guys got me in this observation cell? Leave me the fuck alone. Let me fight my case. Put me back there in ADSEG where Abeta's at and some of these other guys that I knew. I knew Chopo, McIntosh. Put me back there with them. And classification gang intel was a guy named Paul Cobb. He was like, it's never gonna happen. You're gonna stay right here in the observation cell because you got too much power. We're not gonna let you out, you know, into a part of the jail to where you're able to get your hooks in and you start calling shots. We're not going to do that. So, you know, I had to stay in the observation cell for about 3 weeks. But that day that they brought me to court for that amended criminal complaint, when I was walking back, to my surprise, instead of taking me up the elevator that would have took me to 2nd West, they took me through the other elevator and said that I was on the other side now, that I had been rehoused. So I don't know where I'm going, but, you know, they start walking me and I kind of figured they're walking me towards ADSEG. That's where we're going towards. And sure enough, you know, they walk me up to the ADSEG door. They open it up. We go back. We go through 2 or 3 gates and I see, when I walk in, I see Joe Beta, I see Tomas, and I see the other homeboy, Silent. And from this point on, this is when they put me in AdSeg. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cut it right here because, just to recap on this, I want you guys to understand that there's several things that you need to remember from this episode right here. One of the main things that you guys need to remember is that law enforcement were relentless in trying to get me to cooperate from day one. And I want to even say that they came up the second day after I was there, because they had to have me sign a release for them taking the Cadillac and the money. They basically said, do you want to fight this, the Cadillac and the money? Otherwise, we're going to end up taking it. So, I wanted to fight it. So I signed for it. But while I was out there, again, this was Bob Messer, the commander from the Department of Justice. Again, he tried to proposition me. What's up, man? We can help you if you're willing to help yourself. We'll help you. But nobody's gonna twist your arm to make you do it. And I told him, look, man, I'm not interested. I'm not gonna talk to nobody. I wasn't in the mood. I was sick. So I just went back to myself. These guys started to act like they were getting mad or they had an attitude because I wouldn't talk to them. But it was what it was. Now, that's one thing I want you guys to remember, is that they were trying to do this from day one, and they continued to come up. For the next 2 years, they would keep coming up. Every 2 months, 3 months, they kept trying to come up and get me to talk. And every time I would shoot them down. Now, the other thing is that, I had these conversations with my girl and my mom while I was in the observation cell during the first 3 weeks when I hit the jail. That's something I don't want you guys to lose sight of. So those are the two things that, from this, at least this episode right here, those are the two things that I want you guys to remember. Now, it would take me 30 days to get off this stuff, to get through these withdrawals. And the only thing I'm going to say is this: I was obviously at a weakened state. I'm not going to say that this is the reason why, I compromised my beliefs or my integrity by saying some of the things that I said on the phone. I knew what I was saying. That would be a cop-out. I'm not even going to insult your guys' intelligence like that. I knew what I was saying. I knew better. This was a belief system that I had been living for 30 years at that point. Well, at that time, around 25. So, I can't put that on nobody else but myself. But it did have me in a weakened state. I wasn't as strong as I normally would have been, and I wasn't thinking along those same lines. I wasn't really myself. I was weak. After those 30 days, and they put me in AdSeg, and I was around the fellas again, and I felt that morale, and it got my spirits up, and I just felt like I was back amongst my people. I got my feet up under me, I got my bearings back, and I shut those conversations down with my mom, with Vicky, and I told them, look, I got to fight my case. I'm going to be here for a while. It is what it is. The only one I kept kind of continued to pacify was Vicky. And I wasn't talking about cooperating. All I would keep telling her is that, look, it's just a dope case. We got to see how it plays out. I think I'm going to be all right. Let things play out. Let it play out. Let it run its course, and we'll see what happens. But as far as all the cooperation, I stopped all that. I told my mom to stop talking like that on the phone. I told her that, it was going to get misinterpreted. Somebody was going to take it out of context. People were going to hear those phone calls, and I was going to get in trouble. Honestly, did I think that my phone calls would ever come out? No. Why? Because they were just private conversations that I had with my mom and my girl. They weren't relevant to the case. So I didn't think that there was any reason at that point to really worry about them, or that, at that point, I didn't know that this classification, these gang intel officers were just that involved. Had I known that, I wouldn't have said shit on the phone. I would have just kept my business to myself. I would have stayed off the phone. However, I would end up learning the hard way, and it would ultimately cost me my career. So, you guys got a lot in this episode right here, there's a lot of things that happened that are unfixable from this point on. And from this point, you're just going to hear how everything kind of unraveled throughout time, throughout the next 10 years. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I'll probably try to get you guys out another episode tomorrow. You might get stuck with another cliffhanger if Renegade Media wants me to do that interview tomorrow. We'll see. But anyways, this episode 63, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll hit you guys with 64. If not tomorrow, the next couple of days, I plan on trying to get you guys out a couple of war stories as well. Anyways, with that said, it's your boy B, and I'm out.